This video is about some of the scams of the late Ming era, as described in the eponymous book titled The Book of Swindles, written by Zhang Yingyu in the year 1617. Such a time was not so dissimilar to that of our own. The time of the Ming was a time of great prosperity by way of flourishing trade and commerce. For the first time in people's lives, commerce afforded them an opportunity to climb the social ladder if their labor was smart and diligent enough. However, at the same time, the Ming's prosperity had already reached its peak. With only 20 years until the collapse of the legendary dynasty, the time was marked by a social and moral decay as prosperity paved the way for decadence, and the already taken for granted time of plenty was nearing its end. The book takes place in Fujian province, where the accounts of fraud are taken from the local court magistrates who preside over such investigations. I've selected a few of these stories for your education and entertainment. Let's begin. One summer, during the 6th month, an itinerant monk walking down a road came across a little boy leading a herd of oxen. Among them was a large, plump, yellow cow. The cowherd stuck his left leg out for the cow to lick, which it did, and then he did the same with the right leg. "Why is that cow licking your leg?" the monk asked. "She's the tamest," the boy answered, "and I'm especially fond of her. She loves to lick my legs when they get sweaty and salty." From this, the monk realized that the cow, which he secretly coveted, liked licking salty things. The next day, the monk slathered himself in thick brine from head to face, down to his hands and feet. He found his way to the house of the husbandman and knelt at the door crying, "I implore you to show mercy on my grieving heart and save my mother." "I've never practiced Buddhism or recited scriptures," the husbandman said. "How could I save anyone?" "When my late mother was alive," replied the monk, "she wouldn't follow a vegetarian diet or perform acts of virtue. 7 years ago, after she died, I was certain that she would be sent to the underworld as punishment for her sins, but my family was too poor to perform rituals or suture recitations on her behalf. So I followed the example of Mu Lian, saving his mother, and voluntarily shaved my head and took on a master, and have devoted myself to her salvation ever since. Last month, I met a skilled fortune teller who told me she was in your household, reborn as a yellow cow. I have come to respectfully ask to save her. There are 4 head of cattle in my barn. Would you be able to tell which one she is? Let me take a look at them. All creatures have a spirit, and when mother and son meet, there's bound to be a feeling of love that sets her apart from others." The husbandman took the monk to the barn and let the cattle out. When the monk saw the yellow cow, he opened his collar and removed his cap, then began to weep and knelt facing it. "Mother!" he cried. The cow smelled the salt and began to lick him all over his head and face, seemingly out of genuine affection. The monk cried even more and undid his robe. The cow licked him all over, unwilling to leave. The husbandman was astounded by the sight. It really did look like a mother who was unable to speak, doting on her son. He asked the monk, "If this cow really was your mother in its former life, what do you need to do to save her?" "Oh, if I had the money, I'd gladly buy her at half price and take good care of her, but I'm a poor monk with nothing but my name but a robe and an alms bowl. If you'd be willing to give her to me, I would take her to my mountain chapel where I would collect grass and prepare gruel for her every day until her sins are completely expiated. I'd care for her until her allotted years come to an end, and then I'd recite scriptures so that she can be reincarnated as a human being rather than a beast of burden." "She's yours," the husbandman said, moved by his heartfelt speech. The monk kowtowed his thanks and led the cow away to his mountain chapel, where they arrived after 3 days' journey. There he hired a butcher to slaughter it, and sold half the meat, which netted him 1.5 ounces of silver. The other half the monk made into jerky, which he kept in his robe during his travels. His wanderings eventually took him to the house of a powerful man. Uninvited, he entered the main hall and sat there cross-legged until the man came out and asked, "Monk, what are you doing sitting in my hall?" "Don't you recognize me?" "Why should I? I have no idea who you are. Doesn't my face look even a little bit familiar?" "How could it? I've never seen you before." The monk gave a long sigh. "All the liveliness of your spirit has been exhausted. No wonder you don't even recognize the face of an old friend." "How could you be an old friend?" Back when Foyin enlightened Su Shi, or when Master Yuan called back Bai Zhuyi, weren't they old friends of Su and Bai? In your previous life, you and I were devout practitioners, but because you did not fully separate your mind from the world, you've come back to enjoy life in the human realm. I'm here to save you. In order to avoid losing the accumulated merit from your previous life, you must immediately clear your karmic debt from this world by returning to a life of devout self-cultivation. How could you know about previous lives? I have twice the accumulated karma you do. You've already enjoyed half a lifetime. I, on the other hand, spent half a lifetime in strenuous practice. Because of that, understanding past, present, and future lives are easy. Oh yeah? So what devotions have you been practicing in this life? I'll say no more about my previous lives for the moment. In this lifetime, I've been fasting for the past 3 years. Well then, could you fast in my house for a month? Asked the man astonished. The monk smiled. It's already been 3 years. What's another 1 month? Do you drink tea or water? Clear tea and hot water, 1 pitcher a day. The man agreed and swept out an empty room for him to sit in. Each morning he brought in a pot of tea, and each night 1 pot of boiled water. After 7 days, he invited the monk to come out, and they conversed normally. Not having seen the monk eat, the man thought this so remarkable that he was convinced. What sort of practice should I engage in? He asked. Just give up all your property and your secular life, and the right form of practice will be obvious. My wife would become a widow, and my children orphans. To whom could I entrust my estate? I can't do this. What's the next best form of practice? Well, only by making donations to support temples and promote worship of the Buddha will you be rewarded in the next life. On Mount Lu is a hermitage that a lone monk is building all by himself. With donations of, say, 500 ounces of silver, he could complete it. That would bring you great merit. The man agreed, sending a servant to accompany the monk with the silver and to stay for several days to gather information and report back. Later, the monk took half the silver and disappeared. His supposed fasting that convinced the rich man? He was eating the beef jerky hidden from underneath his robe. Most of the top successful candidates in the 1600 provincial civil service examinations in Fujian were students of Master Shen. Master Shen was, as a result, widely revered among the populace. By the beginning of the 12th month, all the holders of the provincial Juren degree had gone to sit for the metropolitan examinations in Beijing. Meanwhile, back in the capital of Fujian, a crook hatched a scheme for which he recruited a local degree holder who was from the same prefecture and had a good hand for calligraphy. The scheme involved composing fraudulent letters in Master Shen's name, sealing them up with a stamp, and having the swindler deliver one to the family of each new exam taker. When the swindler arrived at each house, he would tell the family, Master Shen has written a letter and dispatched your servant to deliver it post-haste. He also entrusted me with the message that the young master of your noble house is certain to triumph in the coming year's examination. The master foresaw this in a remarkable dream and ordered me here to share the good tidings beforehand, with the caution that this news must be kept in the strictest confidence. Young Master so-and-so lives near your honorable residence, and Master Shen fears that if he were to learn that you received a special message, he'd accuse the master of playing favorites. Master Shen is sending a letter of greeting to that house as well, but it's just for appearance's sake, nothing special. Arriving at the next house, the swindler would say the exact same thing. He'd come on express purpose, and the other visits he was making were just for show. When the recipient opened and read the letter, he saw the characters written in exquisite calligraphy and lines of marvelous literary subtlety. Each letter related an auspicious dream containing an omen indicating that the candidate would rank first in the national examinations. Some omens derived from the candidate's name, others from the name of his place of origin. Each prediction was supposedly based on words that had appeared in the dream of Master Shen. I once saw the letter for provincial level degree holder Shong Xiaozu, which read, Fujian is home to more talented men than any province in the realm, the number of graduates often surpassing even Zhejiang and the capital itself. Yet none of these talented men approaches the depth and erudition of your master's command of the spring and autumn annals, nor the vigor and breathtaking acuity of his prose. Next spring will bring triumph in the examinations at the Ministry of Rites. This is a certainty I arrived at without recourse to divination. On the 22nd day of the 11th lunar month, around midnight, I dreamed of a flying bear holding in its paw a red spring blossom, which it lifted high above its head. As it passed in front of a red sun, I saw two gilded characters. First place. So clearly did they appear to me that I remembered them after I awoke. The sun represented the district of Jianyang, the literal meaning of which is sun maker. Bear, as in Xiong, is your master's surname. The spring blossoms signify your master's comprehension and dazzling command of the spring and autumn annals. The gilded characters first placed are a distinct and auspicious omen. Your master's talent and my dream together provide clear evidence that he will be the top examination candidate in the realm. The possibility that one of my disciples should be first placed winner delighted me so much that I was unable to sleep and dispatched a messenger to share the news. Please keep it in confidence. Xiong's family members were overjoyed to read this and tipped the messenger 3 ounces of silver. They tipped him another 2 ounces, saying, "Upon next year's triumph, we'll tip you another 10. Virtually every letter reported an auspicious dream of this type and earned its bearer a tip of several ounces of silver. The next year, after the exam candidates had failed and returned home from Beijing, they would meet up with each other and relate the story containing Master Shen's dream. The listener would invariably clap his hands and laugh uproariously. Quite the spring dream. That crook is a genius if there ever was one. Who wouldn't have been gulled into happily paying him?" All told, the crook's takings totaled over 100 ounces of silver. A man from Tongzhou named Su Guang dealt in fabric from Songjiang. He and his son were halfway home from a sales trip to Fujian province, earnings in hand, when they encountered a man named Ji Sheng, who claimed to be from another county in the home prefecture. His dialect was identical to theirs, and he too was on his way back from selling clothes in Fujian. Seeing that Su Guang was from a neighboring town and that his financial resources were greater, he entrusted Su with 20-odd ounces of silver to store in Su's trunk. Su carefully carried it the whole way, with Ji's silver alongside his own, as if the two men were partners. After several days of travel, Ji saw a chance for profit and hatched a treacherous scheme. One night at an inn, he pretended to have diarrhea and got out of bed repeatedly, opening and closing the door as he went in and out of the little room. Little did he know that Su was an old hand. Seeing Ji going in and out again and again, he became suspicious that Ji had some scheme in the works. Moreover, thought Su, I'm not sure of his origins. Whilst he does have 20 ounces of silver stored in my trunk, tonight he seems to be up to no good. The next time Ji stepped out, Su secretly got up and hid both his money and Ji's money in a bundle of clothes, which he kept beside him in bed. He wrapped some bricks and stones in old clothing and placed these in the trunk. Ji Sheng, seeing that Su Guang and his son had both fallen asleep, took the trunk and stole off into the night. Su lay in bed listening to Ji Sheng's movements. When he heard him leave and not return, he said to himself, just as I thought, he was a crook. If he'd pulled this on anyone but me, he'd gotten away with it too. The next day when Su got up, he made a show of being shocked at the discovery that Ji had stolen his silver and began tussling with the innkeeper. Your accomplice stole my money, he said accusingly. Su's son began to beat the innkeeper furiously, stopping only when his father intervened. Su, certain that Ji would come back, had a plan of his own. They hurried homeward along back roads. Ji, delighted at having stolen Su's money, wandered until midday, travelling nearly 100 li. When he opened the trunk and discovered the bricks and stones and old clothes, he stamped his feet in disgust and travelled all the way back to the inn, where he was roundly beaten by the innkeeper. You thief! You stole someone's money and got me involved too. You'll be strangled for this! The innkeeper cursed as he prepared to turn Ji over to the authorities. All Ji could do was blurt out the truth and beg for mercy while knocking his head on the ground. By then, Su was several days' journey away with all of Ji's silver. Ji was left to nurse his resentment. Chen Qing, a man from Jiangxi province, often traveled to Nanjing to sell horses on 3 Mountain Street in front of the Temple of Granted Wishes. Once, when he had in his possession a fine silver-coloured horse worth some 40 ounces of silver, he was approached by a man who walked with a graceful gait, carried an expensive-looking umbrella, and was dressed in resplendent attire. This rich man stared at the horse as if he couldn't tear himself away from it. "How much would you part with this horse for?" he asked. 40 ounces of silver, Chen replied. I'll buy it, but we'll have to go to my house to draw up a contract and weigh out the silver. Where do you live? Hongwu Gate. With that, the rich man mounted the silver horse and set off with Chen riding another horse behind him. The rich man spotted a silk shop. He dismounted, rested his nice umbrella outside the shop, and told Chen, "Watch my things while I purchase a few bolts of silk. I'll be back in a moment." This guy must be rich, Chen thought. He'll be able to close the deal on the horse for sure. The rich man went into the shop and appeared to be haggling with the shop attendant. When the proprietor accused him of demanding an unreasonable price, the rich man said, allow me to show it to my colleague before I respond to your offer. You're welcome to show these fine goods to anyone you wish, just don't go far. My horse and man are right there. What are you worried about? Once he had the silk in hand, the rich man slipped out the door and fled. Seeing that the horse and the servant were still there, the shop attendant was unconcerned. Chen waited until noon, and when the man didn't return, he concluded that he must be a crook. Deciding to take his umbrella, he mounted the silver horse and started leading the other horse back to the stables. But the silk vendor ran over and stopped him. Your partner took my silk. Where are you going? What partner? The man who rode here with you just now. Don't play dumb. You better give me back my silk. I have no idea what rock that fellow crawled out from under. All I know is that he said he wanted to buy my horse and was taking me to his house to get the money. That's why we came here together. He told me he was going to buy some silk from your shop and would be on our way shortly. If he's not your partner, then why are you watching his umbrella? I only let him take the silk because I saw you and the horse here. The two of you conspired to steal my silk. The two argued to an impasse and ended up bringing their dispute to the prefect of Yingtian. First, the silk vendor gave his version of events. Chen then testified as follows. I, Chen Qing, am originally from Jiangxi province and I make the living as a horse trader. I often come to 3 Mountain Street to sell horses at Wen Chun's shop. I've never done anything crooked. How does this make me a crook's accomplice? That'll do, the prefect said. If he's so honest, the silk vendor started. What was he doing guarding the umbrella of the crook? I won't believe him until I hear an explanation at once. I was just watching his umbrella because he was buying a horse from me. I wasn't his accomplice. Did the man take the umbrella when he left? The prefect asked. No, the silk vendor replied. He's a crook all right, said the prefect. In order to steal your silk, he feigned the purchase of a horse and used Chen Qing as security. Using someone else's horse to acquire silk is the ruse known as obtaining passage through the state of Yu to attack the state of Guo. You're the one who fell for this scheme, so don't blame Chen. Both were released with no restitution required. Judge Bao, known posthumously as Bao the Filial and Solemn, enjoys a reputation as an official of incorruptible morals and keen discernment who applied the law impartially. He never allowed deceivers to save themselves with clever rhetoric, or criminals to expiate themselves by recourse to power and status, nor did he accept inducements. This is why people praised him as follows. Bribe and things will not go well, with Bao, the very king of hell. A playboy from a rich family was once caught fornicating and knew that he was unlikely to go unpunished. He therefore hatched a scheme with one of Judge Bao's officers in advance of the court hearing. His Excellency is a brilliant judge with superhuman powers of investigation. Since in my case there are both witnesses and material evidence, I'm sure to be convicted. If the sentence is severe, while I can pay whatever fine might be imposed, the one thing I really can't endure is a flogging. Do you have any strategy that might reduce how much I'm flogged by? Money is no problem. The officer replied, Tomorrow, when your sentence is about to be carried out, run up to the judge's bench and beg for clemency. I'll be right there and I'll curse you out, which will result in me taking some of the punishment for you. The next day, Judge Bao discovered the facts of the case and in a fury, ordered 40 strokes of the rod for the rich playboy. The young man immediately ran up to the judge's bench and started crying about how he should be spared. Please spare me! The officer hollered at him from the other side of the room. Go on, take your beating. You've got nothing left to say. You're guilty and you're not getting off. Judge Bao was enraged by the sight of an officer overstepping his authority. If he were to overstep his bounds like this in the future, Judge Bao worried, it would only lead to greater troubles. He immediately ordered 20 strokes for the officer and deducted 20 strokes from the rich scion's punishment, in order to make sure his officers didn't step out of line. Little did he realize that he had fallen for the officer's scheme. The officer later received a handsome bribe, and Judge Bao was none the wiser. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like these videos, make sure to subscribe and tick the little bell so you get notified the next time I put out a new video. And if you want to support this channel, check out my link in the description below to sign up with ExpressVPN. It's the best, most consistent VPN that you can use in China or anywhere else in the world for that matter. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week. Peace.